Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Swami.
Good morning, Linda, Paul.
Good morning, Maharaj.
Good morning, Arundhati.
Morning.
Good morning, Betty. Yes.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Noel, good morning.
Good morning, Swami Ji.
How are you? Keeping well?
Oh, yeah, really well. Yourself?
Yeah, me too.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mrs. Lathi. Good morning, Vidyaji. Okay. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning, Swamiji.
Yes. Barbara, good morning.
Okay, good.
I didn't say.
Good morning, John.
Morning, Swami.
Yes, yes. Good morning. Yes, Barbara, got your message. Good morning. Yes. Good morning, Alexandra. All right. So, time to start.
Good morning, Swami.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all of you. All right. So let's begin with chanting. Okay. We shall chant together. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. May the Supreme Spirit protect us. May the Supreme Spirit nourish us. May we work together with great energy. May our study be vigorous and fruitful. May love and harmony dwell amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all. All right. So, as we know, we have completed 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And now we are entering into the 7th. Here is a transition in Bhagavad Gita. And it is good, it will be good to briefly look back at what we have known so far and what we are going to learn in the coming chapters. And one good way of doing that is to take the insights of a great scholar called Madhusudan Saraswati. Madhusudan Saraswati was a great scholar, and his Many works are celebrated. Among them, the most celebrated is probably his annotations on Bhagavad Gita called Gurartha Deepika, that is, annotations with subtle meanings of the Bhagavad Gita. And I came to know recently that in Harvard University, in Indology department, they follows this Gurartha Deepika of Madhusudan Saraswati when they study the Bhagavad Gita. So this is really very, very good book and one of the rarest annotations where Madhusudan Saraswati comments on each word of the Bhagavad Gita. He does not leave any word uncommented. He shares special insights about Bhagavad Gita. But most importantly, what he does is, at the very introduction, his introduction is a masterpiece to Bhagavad Gita. If we don't have the time to read his entire commentary on Bhagavad Gita, we would definitely should read his introduction. In his introduction, he says this Bhagavad Gita, which has 18 chapters, can be broadly classified into 3 sections. First 6 chapters is the first section, next 6 chapters, second section, and last 6 chapters is the third section. And he says that these 18 chapters is nothing but explanation of the great Vedic dictum, the great Vedic utterance, the Mahavakya, you are that, Tat Tvam Asi, which we find in Chandogya Upanishad. He says that in Tat Tvam Asi, Tvam means you, the individual being, we ourselves, the seeker. Tat means God, a cosmic self that we are seeking. And the third word, Asi, means are. That is, the equation is you are that. He says that the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita is, in fact, about you, about the individual being. The next 6 chapters from 7 to 12 is all about God, the Supreme Being. And the last 6 chapters is really brings out the real purport, real meaning of the Vedic dictum, you are that. Last 6 chapters deal with making the equations clear that individual being, that essentially all of us are nothing but God. All of us are divine. This is the real meaning of thou art that, you are that. In Sanskrit, technically, in fact, entire Advaita Vedanta, school of Advaita Vedanta, may be said that they are called Tam Padartha Shodhanam, Tat Padartha Shodhanam. What Vedanta does is just clarifies the real meaning of the word you, clarifies, analyzes, inquires into the real meaning of the word that, God, and how, what they want to show, how essentially we are divine. This is one way of looking at the Vedanta philosophy. Tan padartha shodhanam, tat padartha shodhanam. So he says that, as we have seen, last 6 chapters was mostly about individual being. But he says that In the first 6 chapters that we have studied, there were 3 important topics which were highlighted. First one is nature of individual being, Jiva Sarupam, what we are. And it was said that the individual being, we, are not the body-mind complex. It is beyond that. Body-mind complex is just the container, and there is one contained. Atma and Anatma, the consciousness and content of consciousness. Essential nature of individual being is consciousness, Chaitanyam, which is none other than Sat Chit Ananda, the embodiment of bliss, knowledge, and awareness. Examples of Jiva Sarupam in the first 6 chapters. Second chapter, verses 12 to 25. Third chapter, verse number 42, Indriyani Paranahu. Fifth chapter, verse number 13, Navadware Pure Dehi. These were all about nature of the individual being. The second important topic discussed was the sadhana, the spiritual practice a seeker need to do. And in the first 6 chapters, the emphasis was on karma yoga, how to do work in a way which leads us to our spiritual goal, which leads to spiritual growth, how we can have spiritual growth through doing our work. It started from second chapter, 47 verse, Karmani Adhikaraste, the famous one. Verse number 48, Yogastu Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya. Then, entire third chapter was about Karma Yoga. Fourth chapter, verse number 15, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23. Fifth chapter, verse number 10, and sixth chapter, verse number 1 to 9, all were about emphasizing Karma Yoga as the sadhana, Karma Yoga as the spiritual practice. And Karma Yoga implies karma. Karma means individual effort, self-effort. Law of karma says, if my present is the result of my past, then the future is in my hands. Future will depend how I do my karma in present. Sri Krishna emphasized that in 6th chapter, verse number 5, 6, and 7. Uddharet atmana atmanam, na atmanam avasadayet. Raise yourself by your own effort. Don't let you down. These 3 verses, and even the famous verse which succinctly captures the spirit of Karma Yoga, Karmani eva adhikaraste. You have right to the action, but you don't have your entire control over the results. Also implies that the result to some extent depend on us. We don't have control over the result, but our effort definitely contributes to the result. That is Karma Yoga. So these 3 topics were the main highlighted topics of first 6 chapters. The nature of the individual being and Karma Yoga as the spiritual practice and need of self-effort. In Sanskrit, Jiva Sarupam Karma Yoga, Purusha Prayatna. These three were the main topics related to the individual being and how to realize our full potential through karma yoga and self-effort. The middle section, which according to Madhusudana Saraswati is explanation of the term Tat, God, in which comprise of 6 chapters, chapter 7 to 12. There again 3 topics are highlighted. One is nature of God, Ishvara Sarupam. If Jiva Sarupam, that is nature of individual being, is microcosm, nature of God is macrocosm. In Sanskrit, one is called Vyashti, that is the individual unit, and in totality, Samashti. Throughout the first 6 chapters, Krishna talked mostly about individual being, but from 7 to 12, Sri Krishna will talk all about God, definition of God, function of God, glory of God, and nature of God, all related to God. It is not that in first 6 chapters, God is not mentioned at all. For example, in the 4th chapter, beginning few verses deals with the mystery of divine incarnation. But on the whole, the first 6 chapters do not concern so much about God. But next 6 chapters is all about God and God's glory. As in individual being, it was said that the individual being is real individual being is like the content in the container of body-mind complex. Essentially, individual being is Satchidananda. Similarly, for God too, we have got 2 aspects. The container, the superficial aspect of God, and then the essential nature of God. In Sanskrit, Deha and Dehi. The container and one who lives in that, the body as such body and one who inhabits in the body, Atma or Anatma. And as the individual being was considered to be a mixture of both Atma and Anatma, so also God is a mixture of both Saguna and Nirguna. That is, God with attributes, God without attributes, which we'll see in details later on. And the second topic that is highlighted in the next 6 chapters from 7 to 12, as it was Karma Yoga in the first 6 chapters as sadhana, here the sadhana is upasana, Ishara upasana, that is adoration of God, bhakti to God or surrender to God, devotion to God, Ishvara Dhyanam, meditation on God. All these are called upasana, that is related to God. Third topic that is highlighted in the next section is grace of God as an important factor in spiritual growth. In the first chapter, as we saw, the emphasis was on self-effort. Second chapter, in the second section, the emphasis will be along with self-effort, we also need grace of God. We have to depend on the grace of God. So in Sanskrit, the second section of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7 to 12, highlights 3 topics: nature of God, upasana, or devotion to God and grace of God. Ishvara Sarupam, Ishvara Upasana, and Ishvara Kripa. With this background, let us now enter into the 7th chapter, which is a very important chapter. It's a transitional chapter, and we shall today take up first 3 verses. The first 3 verses of 7th chapter are introduction of not only the 7th chapter, but also introduction to the entire second section, chapters 7 to 12. The first, Sri Krishna says that Maya Sakta Manaha Partha Yogam Junjan Madashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasvasi Tat Shrinu. Sri Krishna said, taking refuge in me and practicing yoga with a mind which is totally absorbed in me, how you will come to know me completely and doubtlessly. Please listen to this, O Arjuna. So he is kind of giving a trailer, what you are going to get from me. He says that if you follow my teachings that I am going to deliver to you, you will come to know me. That is, come to know me means come to know nature of God. This chapter and the following chapters, you will get Ishvara Jnanam, knowledge of God, Mam Gyasvasi. And what is that? Samagram, both the natures of God. Sri Krishna will tell very soon that God also has got 2 natures, the lower and the higher. The lower nature is the visible, physical nature of God, God with form, God with attributes. In Sanskrit, saguna, with attributes. And the higher nature is the invisible, intangible, eternal, all-pervading nature of God, the transcendental nature of God, called Nirguna Ishvara, God without attributes. So when you know both the natures of God, God with attributes and attributeless God, then your knowledge about God will be complete. Samagram, that is in totality. That will be the total knowledge about God. And Sri Krishna says, Asamshayam Gyasvasi. You won't have any doubt about that. So that is kind of advertisement, that you won't have any doubt if you follow my teachings that I am going to give you here and in the next few chapters. But there is a but. 3 conditions. To know my nature completely without and doubtlessly, you need to follow the teachings, but there are 3 conditions which were told in the first line of the verse. Number 1 is you should have your mind fixed on God. Maya sakto manaha. Your mind should be fixed on me, and God should be your ultimate destination. If God is not your ultimate destination, you will not be interested to follow what I am going to teach you. So God should be your ultimate destination. Now you may ask, what about other destinations we have, like financial security, family, society, all those things? So according to Bhagavad Gita, those are incidental destinations, because once we reach any of them, we fulfill any of them, we feel that we need to move on to the next destination. None of them give us complete fulfillment. According to Bhagavad Gita, when we will find inner fulfillment, then only our journey will be complete. And that is possible only when we know the nature of God, which is nothing but knowing our true nature. So others are incidental destinations, but discovering our fulfillment by reaching the final destination called God is the final goal for every individual being. So that is the first condition, Maya Sakto Manaha, your mind fixed on me and having me as your final destination. Second, need for sadhana, need for engaging in spiritual practice. Yogam yunjan. Yogam means any kind of sadhana. It may be karma yoga, it may be bhakti, it may be shravana, manana, nididhyasana, it may be meditation. Depending upon your need and inclination of your mind, you need to engage yourself in some kind of sadhana to reach to me. That is the meaning of the term yogam yunjan. So do whatever you need to do. It implies also self-effort. To engage yourself in a sadhana means doing something with your effort, self-effort. But that is not enough. Third one, Sri Krishna says, is divine grace. Madashrayaha. You need to rely on divine grace too, as taking refuge in God. As someone said very nicely, that engines which run on steam, when they go uphill, they need two engines. Uphill, they need two engines, one at the front to pull, another engine at the back to push. So spiritual growth is also an uphill job. The growth is slow. We move on slowly in this spiritual path. Serious spiritual growth is slow and requires two engines, self-effort and divine grace. These two engines can help us to reach the destination. So if Sri Krishna says that these are the three conditions, if you have your mind fixed on me as your final destination, if you engage in some sort of sadhana, and if you become receptive to divine grace, then you will be able to follow the teachings that I am going to impart you, which will be knowledge about God in totality. Then he further says, give technical names to these two types of knowledge. That is knowledge of two natures of God. He says, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshamya sheshataha yajgyatva neha bhuyanyat gyatavyam avashishvate. I shall completely impart to you this jnana along with vijnana, gaining which nothing more remains to be known in this life. So Krishna goes on with the introduction, continues with the introduction. Complete knowledge of God, he said, what he said, mentioned in the first verse, means knowledge of both the higher attributeless aspect of God and lower aspect of God with attributes. I am going to give you both. And here, this knowledge about the lower nature of God, that is God with attributes like God with qualities, God qualities like, love, compassion, grace, all those qualities that we read about, we think about God, is really the lower nature of God, concerning lower nature of God. And that is given a technical name here, Jnanam. And knowledge about Nirguna Ishvara, God without any attributes, God the transcendental, is given a technical name called Vijnana. When a person is in that level, that is God, when in the level of Saguna Ishvara, at the level of God with attributes and qualities, they will see a division between themselves and God. There will be always a difference between me and God. But when a person elevates to the level of Nirguna Ishvara, God without attributes, the difference between God and the devotee will vanish, which is the purport of the meaning of the Vedic dictum, you are that. It is just like looking at the wave and ocean. From the standpoint of name and form, there is difference between wave and the ocean. Wave is wave, name is wave, form is different from ocean. It is small something, a wave is something, and the ocean is, name is ocean, and form is vast. From that standpoint, wave and ocean are different, but essential nature, from the standpoint of essential nature, both are water, both are H2O. So that is, looking at God with attributes means seeing the difference. The difference remains between the devotee and the God. And going to the level of attributeless God, essentially, there is no difference between devotee and God. So, Jnanam, the technical name, means knowledge about God with attributes, that is duality. There is duality. And Vijnanam means non-duality, knowledge about non-dual God. These two are the technical names. And Sri Krishna says, I am going to give you both, asheshataha, thoroughly, totally. And what is the benefit of this knowledge? Sri Krishna says, having known which, you won't have the desire to know anything else, or there will not remain anything to be known. Yach gyatva neha bhuyo anyat gyatavyam avashishyate. Your intellect will get total satisfaction. All your intellectual questions will be resolved. So we human beings, when we are curious by nature and we want to know things, and there are some queries, existential queries like, where did the creation come from? What is the nature of the individual being? What is consciousness? Is death the end of a living being? What is the meaning of life? Who is God? In short, the questions regarding Jiva, Jagata, and Ishvara, about ourselves, about God, and the world. And is there any relation between all those three things? All fundamental questions will be resolved, and until they are resolved, our curiosity will remain. Sri Krishna says, you will come to know what is God, what is world, who you are, and also the relationship between among these three. All those things I am going to give. Knowledge about all those three things you will get to know. In Mundaka Upanishad, we find such a question was put by Shaunaka, a great householder, to one teacher, Angiras, that Kasminnu Bhagavo Vigyate Sarvamidam Vigyanam Bhavati. The third verse, third mantra of Mundaka Upanishad. What is that, knowing which everything else is known? Then Angiras says that knowledge which satisfy your all queries is called Paravidya, the superior knowledge. Atma Vidva, superior knowledge. Similarly, Sri Krishna here also says that having known that, having known God completely in its both aspects, you will have all your queries, all your questions resolved. Then he goes on to say, to draw attention of the listener, that is Arjuna, and also all of us, because as I said, these three verses are introductory verses of 7th chapter as well as next 6 chapters. So to draw our attention, he said, you are going to first listen, what you are going to get, what is coming, what is in store. Now he says the reality of this knowledge, the glory of this knowledge. He says, this is also very oft quoted verse of Bhagavad Gita. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschit mam vetti tattataha. The meaning of this verse is, among thousands of people, rare few strive for that highest knowledge. And among those who strive for highest knowledge, this knowledge, only a few really come to know about me. So the glory of this knowledge is rarity of this knowledge. Because why this knowledge is very rare? Sri Krishna says, because majority of people are busy pursuing so many other things in life. And as we know, Vedanta says there are all the pursuits can be classified into 4 pursuits: artha, wealth or security; kama, pleasure or entertainment; dharma, virtues or the good life; and finally comes the desire for inner freedom, moksha. Sri Krishna says that majority of people are engaged in other pursuits. Only a few strive for inner freedom, and this striving for inner freedom is called mokshecha, the desire for moksha, or mumuksha, desire for freedom, or called also mumukshatva, desire for this inner freedom. Manushyanam sahasreshu, sahasra means thousands. Among thousands of people, kaschit, only a few, yatati, strive, aspire for, only aspire or strive in the right direction. What is the right direction? Siddhaye, for siddhi, that is for inner freedom, to come to the understanding that we are essentially free. Externals really don't control our inner freedom. We are essentially fulfilled. To that direction, only a few people strive for. And among those, siddhanam api yatatam. So among those who are striving for that siddhi, that inner freedom, some only come to know me tattataha, in totality, in reality. What is that? Madhusudan Saraswati says, some of them, some striving for liberation, moksha, among them only a few come to the understanding or realize the meaning of this great Vedic dictum, Tattvamasi, you are that. Some perchance come to that realization that we ourselves are divine. What we are seeking, we are that. That is tattataha, in totality. So these are the 3 introductory verses of 7th chapter and introductory verses of the next 6 chapters. Shri Krishna emphasized first that if you have three conditions. One is, if your mind is intent on me, if you are engaged in some spiritual practices, sadhana, depending upon your need and inclination, and thirdly, if you are receptive to divine grace, then, and if you follow my teachings, you will come to know me in totality. By that he meant there are two aspects of God: the lower nature of God, which is with attributes, with qualities, and which also has form, anthropomorphic God. And there is a higher nature of God, which transcends qualities, which is beyond any classification. These both aspects of God you will come to know. And he gave technical name to these two types of knowledge. Knowledge about lower nature of God, he called Jnanam. Knowledge about the transcendental nature of God, he called Vijnanam. Sri Krishna says, you will come to know both this knowledge. I will give you both this knowledge in totality, after which you won't have any doubt. And not only that, all your queries about the meaning of life or your fundamental queries will be resolved. And this knowledge is very rare because only a few people strive for this knowledge, and among those who are striving, only a few really come to realize this truth, which is you are that. So this is the introduction, and in next 8 verses he will speak about the two natures of God, the lower and the higher, and that we shall see in the talk titled the net and its weaver. The net and its weaver, that is to come in next week. So we shall close with the closing chant, and after that we can have interaction, question, comment, or your observation. Let's chant together. Okay. Om Madhubata Ritayate Madhuksharanti Sindhavaha Madhiirna Shantoshadhihi Madhunaktam Utoshasi Madhumat Parthivagam Rajaha Madhudvau Astuna Pita Madhumano Banaspatir Madhumagam Astu Suryaha Madhir Gabo Bhavantu Naha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sweet blow the winds, and the oceans give forth blessedness. May the herbs and plants bring us health and happiness. Sweet unto us be the nights and dawns. May every particle of Mother Earth be charged with blessing. May the heavens shower us with benediction. Sweet unto us be the noble forest trees. Sweet unto us be the shining sun. Sweet unto us be all living creation. Om, sweetness, harmony, peace. All right, so you can unmute and talk.
Swamiji, I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So you mentioned there has to be an effort from the person who is pursuing.
Yeah.
Like meditation is one of the effort.
Yes.
But I was reading Kathamrita.
Yes.
And
Yes. Sure. Yes. Sadhva. Yes. Yes.
Thakur says in Bengali, I'm saying, ব্যাকুলতা থাকতে হবে তবে হয়. So how does it come? Will meditation give me that? Or?
Yes. Yes. Yearning will come naturally with practice. In fact, yearning is as Sri Ramakrishna himself says, yearning is the crimson sun before sunrise. Before sunrise, the horizon is crimson. So Sri Ramakrishna says that when the yearning has come, it means God realization is not far.
Okay.
Yes. So that will come naturally. And if you remember that while discussing the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I mentioned that this yearning can be imposed while we're doing meditation. We can impose ourselves this yearning, that is as if we are yearning, as if we have yearning, which is not real, but which in time will become real.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji.
You are welcome. Are there any contradictions, inconsistencies, saying any of the paths yogas will lead to same understanding, yet here saying there is higher and lower knowledge? No. Any yoga will lead us to the same goal. Okay, higher knowledge and lower knowledge is not about the path. Higher knowledge and lower knowledge about the nature of the God, the aspect of the God. Okay, so irrespective of whatever path we are following, ultimately we are destined to have the both kind of knowledge, the lower aspect of God and higher aspect of God. Here, knowledge about God and lower knowledge, or the knowledge is not lower or knowledge is not higher. Knowledge is about the so-called lower aspect and higher aspect. And if we don't like the term lower and higher, we may say the knowledge about God with attributes, the knowledge about God without attributes. Does Vijnana have different connotations? Sure, Vijnana has many connotations. Here, Vijnana has a particular connotations. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that Shankaracharya, according to Shankaracharya, he explained Jnana and Vijnana differently. He explained Jnana as theoretical knowledge about God and Vijnana as direct aparaksha anubhuti or experience about God. So both are correct. Here I chose to follow the interpretation of Madhusudana Saraswati. And of course, Sri Ramakrishna says Vijnana. According to him, Vijnana is realization of both God's transcendental aspect and immanent aspect of God. Vijnana means transcendental as well as immanent aspect of God. God is not only transcendental, but superconscious experience, but God is also in here, in nature. God has become everything. He says it Nitya and Leela.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yeah, Arundhati, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, go ahead.
So the three conditions that you mentioned, one was keeping God as the goal. Second was having a spiritual practice, and third, following the teachings.
Now,
So-
third one was grace of God. Madashraya.
Grace of God.
Madashraya. Okay.
Okay.
So both
Second one is-
self-effort as well as divine grace, and also keeping God as your ultimate destination.
Okay.
Maya sakto mana yogam junjan madashraya.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right.
Maharaj,
Yes.
in that milk example that Thakur gives, one who gets nourished by the milk, that is good.
Yes, yes.
So that is like experience of God in the immanent.
Yeah, God is both aspects.
Okay.
All right. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
There has
Thank you,
been
Swami.
echo for the last 5 minutes or so. That is because during the question and answer, because I have kept everybody, unmuted. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you for joining.
Pranam.
Have a great
Thank
week.
you, Swami
See you.
Ji.
Yes. Thank you.